I hope that you are well, and I also hope that you are having a good day so far. Today we'll be doing our grade 7 English lesson on verbs. And before we start, we're going to log on to aplusstudents.ca. Once we've logged on to aplusstudents.ca with our username as well as our password, then we're going to select the subject of language arts, grade 7. And then we're going to scroll down up until we get to the chapter of verbs. All right. So our chapter is verbs. Our subject is English language arts, grade 7. And the lessons that we are going to focus on under the chapter of verbs is to form the perfect verb tense and identify transitive and intransitive verbs. We're also going to lastly identify linking verbs, predicate adjectives, as well as predicate nouns. That is going to be our lessons that we're going to be focusing on under the chapter of verbs. All right. So when it comes to the perfect verb tense, right? When we talk about tenses, then we usually talk about either present tense, we talk about past tense, or we talk about future tense. So before we even go to the word perfect verb, right? Tenses is to do with either present tense, past tense, or we're talking about future tense, right? That is our tenses. And now the perfect tense, right? It usually describes actions. So we have the perfect tense, and the perfect tense, it usually describes completed action, right? So it describes a completed action. And it tells about something that has happened, it had happened, or it will have happened. And that is usually to do with either present tense, it's to do with past tense, or in the future. And usually in the future, we use the word will. And to form the present tense, right, then we use a form, of the helping verb to have. So we basically use a form of the helping word to have with the past participle of the main verb. So once again, when it comes to when we use the, not even when we use, in order for us to form the perfect tense, right? I think I said present tense. But to form the perfect tense, then we use a form of the helping verb, and the helping verb to have with the past participle of the main verb. And remember, our main verb is the action, which is either, for example, jump, sing, play, dance, right? That is maybe our main verb. Then our helping verbs, which means like it would be, let's say, usually the word before that verb. It helps the verb to show the action. Then, basically, when it comes to a past participle, right, of a verb, the past participle of a verb is usually the same as the past tense form. So, the past participle of the verb, it is usually the same as the past tense of the verb, but sometimes it is irregular. And remember, when it's irregular, then it means that it does not follow any rules. You are just going to have to remember the verb when it changes from present tense to past tense, right? You're going to remember what the word is. You're going to have to remember how to even spell or write the word, right? But it is not, there's no rule that you need to follow where we say you either add ed or you add a d to either show the past tense form of that word. It's like, let's say a word think, right? We maybe have a word think. This is just an example. This is now an irregular verb. Think. So we don't say I think. So we don't say in the past tense, I think. This is wrong, right? So we say in the past tense, I thought, right? So this is an irregular verb. And a regular verb would be, for example, if we say jump, and then a regular verb would be jump. We just added an ed. So our word still stays the same. We just added an ed. That is a regular verb. But an irregular verb is like where the word changes. That is why we say it does not follow any rules like adding ed or d. You are just going to have to remember basically the word, right? You're going to have to remember the verb. All right, so now when it comes to our different tenses, right? Because we said we need to form the perfect verb tenses, and we said perfect tenses, it usually describes completed action. So now a perfect, or let's say a present perfect tense. So a present perfect tense, right? It tells about something that has happened or has started already. Meaning that it has started already. We are currently doing it, right? It is currently in motion. It's happening now, right? And that is a present perfect tense. So present perfect tense, once again, it tells us about something that has happened or has started already, right? And when it comes to the present tense, the present perfect tense, then it uses a present tense form of the helping verb to have, which is has and have. So which means that we're going to use the word have or has. So the word has or the word have is going to come in front of our main verb, right? And that will basically show our tense, or it will show the specific tense, or it will show the perfect tense. For example, the sun has broken through the clouds. The sun has broken through the clouds, right? So which means that it's basically telling us now that it is sunrise already, or meaning that the sun is coming out nicely, changing that cloudy day into a sunny day. So which means that broken is our main verb. I'm going to write here main verb. So broken is our main verb, right? And the word has is the helping verb. So the sun has broken through the clouds. If we look at another one, right, it says John and Erica have played the violin for 5 years. So John and Erica have played the violin for 5 years. So which means that this is something that has happened, right? Or something that has started. It is something ongoing, right? So now it means if we look at our main verb, right? Our main verb is played. So that is the main verb. I'm going to put their main verb. And our helping verb is the word have. So our helping verb is have. So John and Erica have played the violin for 5 years. All right. So that is basically the present perfect tense. And we see the present perfect tense, it tells you about something that has happened or it has started, right? And it uses words like has or it uses words like have. That is the helping verbs, has or have. Then we have the past perfect tense. And the past perfect tense tells about something that had happened before something else. So the past perfect tense, it tells us about something that had happened before something else. It had happened. And it uses the past tense form helping verb had. That shows the past tense. The word had is going to go in front of our main verb. For example, we had finished dinner by the time Tim arrived. A helping verb, which is had, and the main verb finished. We had finished dinner by the time Tim arrived. That is our past perfect tense, and it tells us that something had happened before something else. So, which means that before Tim even arrived, we had finished dinner. Something had happened before something else. And we use the helping verb had. Then we have our future perfect tense. And our future perfect tense tells about something that will have happened by a certain point in the future. So it will have happened by a certain point in the future. Right? And when it comes to the future perfect tense, then it uses the future tense form helping verb will have. So we use the word will have to show the future perfect tense. And if we look at an example of the future perfect tense, right, then we can say the race will have started by noon tomorrow. So the race will have started by noon tomorrow, which means that will have is our helping verb and our main verb is started. And that basically shows the future perfect tense that tells us about something that will have happened by a certain point in the future. Right? So that is basically our forming a perfect, or let's say that is perfect verb tenses, right? So now we are going to our tutorial lesson, which is a plus students.ca. We're going to do that now and then also do our test on aplusstudents.ca. So let's go to aplusstudents.ca. So we're going to the lesson to form perfect verb tenses, right? And remember we said when it comes to perfect verb tenses, or let's say tenses, then it's to do either with present tense, past tense, or future tense. And in this case, it is to do with present perfect tense, which tells us about something that has happened or has started happening already. And we use the helping verb has or have in front of our main verb. Then we have the past perfect tense, which tells us about something that had happened before something else, and we use the helping verb had in front of our main verb. And then we have the future perfect tense, right, which tells us about something that will have happened by a certain point in the future. And we use the helping verb will have in front of our main verb to basically show the perfect tense, right? Now, if we look at, let's complete the sentence with the perfect form. Let's say the past perfect form of the verb. Perfect form of the verb, right? It says, since I my raincoat. So since I my raincoat and the rain was showing no sign of letting up, I fashioned plastic garbage bag into a makeshift poncho. Let's use the word, I'm going to use the word misplaced, right? I'm going to give you the right, and then you are going to put the perfect, let's say put the helping verb in front of that main verb. It says, since I misplaced my raincoat and the rain was showing no sign of letting up, I fashioned a plastic garbage bag into a makeshift poncho. What is the helping verb that we can basically use to show the past perfect tense that we will put in front of this word misplaced? So, what is our past perfect helping verb that we are going to put in front of our main verb? All right. So if we are going to show the past perfect tense, right, and then we are going to add the word had in front. So it says, since I had misplaced my raincoat and the rain was showing no sign of letting up, I fashioned a plastic garbage bag into a makeshift poncho. So we basically added the word had with the helping verb had in front of our main verb. All right, so now let's do our test, right? Where we are going to form the perfect verb tenses. All right, so we need to complete the sentence with with the present perfect form of the verb. So the present perfect form of the verb, right? It says the apricot scone. So the apricot scone, which is packed with fresh apricots, walnuts, cashews, and dried cherries. Do we say has replaced the carob or the carob muffin as the best selling item or the menu? Or do we say it replaced the carob muffin as the best selling item on the menu? So once again, the apricot scone, which is packed with fresh apricots, walnuts, cashews, and dried cherries, do we say has replaced? Or do we just say replace the carob muffin as the best selling item on the menu? Which word or which of these verbs, as well as the helping verb, basically gives us the idea that this is a present perfect form? We need to choose the present perfect form of the verb. Is it has replaced, or do we just say replace? Present perfect form. All right, then if we choose the correct present perfect form of the verb, then we can say has replaced. Right? So has replaced is our present perfect form. Now we need to select the past perfect form of the verb, the past perfect form of the verb. It says, since I, do we say since I misplaced my raincoat or since I had misplaced my raincoat and the rain was showing no sign of letting up? I fashioned a plastic garbage bag into a makeshift poncho. So since I misplaced my raincoat, or do we say since I had misplaced my raincoat and the rain was showing no sign of letting up, I fashioned a plastic garbage bag into a makeshift poncho. All right. And if we choose the correct one, we can say the past perfect tense would be had replaced. Had being a helping verb and misplaced being our main verb. All right. Now we need to complete the sentence with the future perfect form of the verb. The future perfect form of the verb. It says, by the time Joe is through with his current courses, do we say he will have earned his health information technology degree? Or do we say he earned his health information technology degree? So by the time Joe is through with his current courses, he will have earned his health information technology degree, or he earned his health information technology degree. Which one is the correct one? That shows the future perfect form of the verb. All right, then if we choose the correct one, we will then say will have earned, right? Because will have is our helping verb and earned is our main verb. All right, so now we're going to identify transitive and transitive verbs, right? We're going to identify transitive and intransitive verbs. So when it comes to transitive and intransitive verbs, right? A transitive verb. So when an action verb is transitive. So when an action verb is transitive, then it is followed by a direct object. So if an action verb is transitive, then it is followed by a direct object. And a direct object is either the pronoun, it can be the noun, or it can be a noun phrase that receives the action of the verb. And to define the direct object, we need to ask our questions. We need to ask questions like what? We ask questions whom, right? So we either ask questions what or we ask the questions whom the verb is acting on. So that is a transitive verb. So transitive verb is followed by a direct object. And we said a direct object can either be the pronoun, a noun, or a noun phrase that receives the action of the verb. And when it comes to us finding the direct object, then we can ask ourselves what or whom the verb is acting on. For example, Joan walked her dog, right? So this is our example. Joan walked her dog. So now the question is, remember we said when it comes to finding the direct object, that we need to ask ourselves either what or whom the verb is acting on. So it says Joan walked her dog. So you can ask yourself, what or whom did Joan walk? So Joan walked her dog. So now the question is, what or whom did Joan walk? So which means that our transitive verb is her dog. Our direct object is her dog. Right? So we said our the verb is walked. So the verb walked is transitive in the sentence because it has a direct object, which is the dog or her dog. So what did Joan walk? Joan walked her dog. So that is the transitive verb, right? Then we have intransitive verb, right? So the action is intransitive, which means that it does not have a direct object. So intransitive, it means that it does not have a direct object. An example is Joan walked around the block. Remember we said a direct object is either the pronoun, a noun, or a noun phrase that receives the action, right, of the verb. Now, our transitive, right, our intransitive, it does not have a direct object. It does not have a pronoun, a noun, or a noun phrase that receives the action of the verb. And we said Joan walked around the block, right? So now question is, what or whom did Joan walk? So we said there's no direct object to answer the question what or whom. So we basically only answer the question what or whom based on if it's a transitive verb because it has a direct object, right? But now, if it's intransitive, right, it does not have a direct object, which means that we cannot answer the question what or whom because it doesn't have a pronoun, it doesn't have a noun, or doesn't have a noun phrase that it is acting on. So our verb walked is intransitive. And the reason why it's intransitive within the sentence, it is because it does not have a direct object. We cannot answer the question what or whom, for example, it is acting on, the verb is acting on. Because like we say, it does not have a direct object. It does not have a pronoun, a noun, or a noun phrase that receives the action of the verb. right? So when an action verb, right, is followed immediately by a prepositional phrase, then it is always intransitive. So when an action verb is followed immediately by a prepositional phrase, then we say it is always intransitive. So basically, the noun, pronoun, or noun phrase is a prepositional phrase. In a prepositional phrase is never a direct object, right? All right, so let's go to our test. So now we are going to see if these words in bold are either transitive or if it is intransitive. They're saying select the action verb, right? We're going to select the action verb. If the verb is transitive, also select the direct object. So it says Olympus Mons, a massive shield volcano on Mars, covers an area about the size of Arizona. Or Olympus Mons, a massive shield volcano on Mars, covers an area about the size of Arizona. So we need to select the action verb. And only if the verb is transitive, then we also select the direct object. So the action verb says Olympus Mons, a massive shield volcano on Mars. It covers an area about the size of Arizona. Or is it just volcano on Mars? So they're saying we need to select the action verb. All right. And if we choose the action verb, then it's going to be covers an area, right? So the first option was our answer, and it did not have a direct object. All right, we need to select the action verb, and they said if the verb is transitive, then we also need to select the direct object. Remember the direct object, it's either a noun, a pronoun, or a noun phrase that it is acting on, that it basically shows the action to. In 1964, the 1964 disappearance of 3 civil rights workers in Mississippi ignited a national discussion about race relations in the United States. Or the 1964 disappearance of 3 civil rights workers in Mississippi ignited a national discussion about race relations in the United States. So is it national discussion about the race relations in the United States, or is it ignited a national discussion about the race relations in the United States? We need to choose the correct one. The action verb. All right, so we will say ignited a national discussion about race relations in the United States. All right, it says English actor Daniel Day, right? It says English actor Daniel Day Lewis won several major awards for his principal role in the film Lincoln? Or do we say English actor Lewis won several major awards for his principal role in the film Lincoln? So do we say won several major awards, or do we just say several major awards? So won several major awards or just several major awards? All right, so we will go with won several major awards because that is basically our action verb, right? So we've identified our action verb over there. All right, so now we're going to identify linking verbs, predicate adjectives, as well as predicate nouns, right? And a linking verb, right? We have linking verbs. We also have helping verbs. We have main verbs. We have transitive and intransitive verbs. But now, linking verbs, right? A linking verb is a verb that connects the subject to the adjective or noun in the predicate, right? So a linking verb, it is a verb that connects or joins the subject to an adjective or the subject to a noun in the predicate, right? And a linking verb does not show action. Remember, we said a predicate does not show completed action. It's either missing a noun or it's missing a verb, right? So in this case, they're saying a linking verb does not show action. For example, Washington, D.C. is home to the Lincoln Memorial and the Washington Monument. So Washington, D.C. is home to the Lincoln Memorial and the Washington Monument, right? So firstly, we say a linking verb is a verb that connects the subject to an adjective or noun in the predicate, meaning an adjective, a predicate adjective or predicate noun. It links that. So if we look at a predicate adjective, it describes the subject, right? And here they say the dark chocolate cake that Julie baked tastes incredibly rich. So we need to describe this dark chocolate, right? So this dark chocolate is being described as rich. That is a predicate adjective. It describes the subject, right? So we then we have a predicate noun, right? And it identifies or it renames the subject. It identifies or renames the subject. And an example of a predicate noun, it is the mother is the most driven salesperson in her division. Sorry, my mother. My mother is the most driven salesperson in a division, which means that this person is basically saying that her mother, right, is the most driven salesperson in a division, right? But now at her workplace, the mom is also known as a salesperson. So which means that the predicate noun, it is being identified as a salesperson. The mother is being identified as a salesperson. It's almost like saying that the subject is being renamed as the salesperson. So instead of saying my mother, right, is the most salesperson in the division, we can even say my mother is the most. The salesperson is basically identified as the mother, or the mother's identified as a salesperson. So that means it's just being renamed or identified or that is how she's being identified as a salesperson. When it comes to linking verbs, right? We said linking verbs, the linking verbs is a verb that connects the subject to an adjective or a noun in the predicate, right? And the most common linking verbs, right, are forms of the verb to be. Other linking verbs include appear, become, feel, grow, look, remain, seem, sound, stay, and taste. Right? That is linking verbs. And we see that some of the linking verbs can also be used as either linking verbs or action verbs. So some of the verbs can either be used as linking verbs or it can be used as action verbs. And examples of that is Jenna grew tired as the evening wore on, right? Which means that the word grew is a linking verb and it connects the subject, which is Jenna, to the predicate adjective, right? That describes it. So grew is our linking verb. And tired describes Jenna. Or we can say Jenna grew tomatoes in a garden last year. Grew, once again, is the action verb. So it's not the linking verb in this sense, it's the action verb in this sense. And you can tell it's not a linking verb because it shows action, because the noun in the predicate doesn't identify or rename the subject, Jenna. So grew tomato tells us what she's doing, right? Whereas grew tired is a linking verb. All right, so now we're going to our test. We need to select the linking verb and the predicate noun in the predicate adjective. It says, after days of careful deliberations, the jurors remain undecided about the verdict. So do we say they remain undecided or do we say they just remain? We need to select the linking verb and the predicate noun or predicate adjective. So if we were to select both, then we would say remain undecided, right? Because that is both linking verb and the predicate noun or predicate adjective. We need to select the linking verb and the predicate noun or predicate adjective. It says, the forbidden island of Niho or Niao, a private island with few inhabitants, is geologically the oldest of the Hawaiian islands. So the forbidden island of Nia, a private island with a few inhabitants, is geologically the oldest of the Hawaiian islands. So do we say is oldest or just is as our linking verb and the predicate noun or predicate adjective? Right? And the is and oldest is the correct linking verb as well as predicate noun or predicate adjective. All right, so that is the end of our lesson on verbs, right? We formed perfect verb tenses as well as identified transitive and intransitive verbs. And then lastly, we identified linking verbs, predicate adjectives, as well as predicate nouns. So that is the end of our lessons, grade 7. I really hope that you're going to have a good evening further. Goodbye.